everybody. You're listening to The Big Chill Podcast. This is episode 302, the Dane Miller interview. Hello, Big Chillians, and welcome back to the Big Chill Podcast. I'm Frank, joined as always with Sam and Eddie. I know we have a lot of French listeners, and I know Eddie is ready to give it to them. So Eddie, I want you to jump right into it. Go ahead.
So to speak. Look, all I can
say
for
context, the match has just ended, and we're recording just after the deciding penalty miss.
Yeah, so Switzerland have just knocked France out of the Euros in the last 16, and after a 3-3 coming from 3-1. For the context of the listeners of the match, Switzerland took the lead. They then had a penalty to go 2-0 up, which was saved. France then immediately went 2-1 up, and then later 3-1 up, at which point Paul Pogba decided to stand there like a total prat as his celebration. And then Switzerland scored 2 late goals to force extra time, and they then went to penalties. Every penalty was scored until Mbappe took France's 5th penalty, at which point it was saved, and Switzerland are through. Look, as someone who lives in Paris, all I can say is the streets of Paris are very, very quiet right now. My issue always with France is 2 things. One, they're the biggest fair weather fans in the world. Like, they will not watch the remainder of this tournament now. Also, I know that they will complain tomorrow. They'll say that the referee cost them somehow. They'll say that something went against them. Like, they can never just think we underperformed or that team outplayed us. It will always be someone else's fault for why they've lost. And on the balance, it was a good match. France played very well in the second half to come back from behind. Switzerland, I was impressed with. I think they were more dangerous going forward than I would have expected. I expected them to be really organized and defensively quite solid, which in the end they kind of weren't. Solid defensively, at least. But I did expect them to be competent. But it's very, very surprising that France's reigning world champions are being knocked out against one of Europe's respectable but smaller footballing nations.
Yeah, Sam, I don't know if you agree, but for me, I thought when that penalty was saved, I thought that was going to be our talking point, that had they put that in, do they hold on to win? And I think it was pretty amazing that they then went down 3-1 and still came back. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I said it during the match that when Switzerland were 1-0 up, I was actually more confident in Switzerland pulling off the upset than when they missed the penalty. Because you do get that feeling of like, that's going to galvanize the French. They're going to, well, as they did, they're going to be re-energized. They're going to go up the pitch. And they did what they did within 4 minutes of the penalty miss and go 2-1 up. And then you saw the swagger of going 3-1 up, which is ultimately now looks really bad. But yeah, I felt more confident at 1-0 in a weird way than a penalty miss and staying 1-0. It just felt like the writing was there. But yeah, fair play to the Swiss, really. I mean, when we saw them in that Group A, a few pretty average performances against the Turkish, the Welsh, and then, the Italians were very good in that group. But suddenly to really step up going into the knockout phases to do what they did, come back in the way they did as well, and to hold their nerves. There were some really good penalties in there from both teams, actually, but the Swiss especially. So, no, well done to them.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I mean, Sam and I were speaking during the match, but 100% it felt like that was just such a huge momentum shift to have the missed penalty. And the same camp as Sam, I would have been more confident in them had they just not been awarded the penalty and not missed it. But then when you feel like, if you're Swiss, you suddenly start to think like that was our chance to maybe kill the match off. And if you're French, you think, okay, things are going to go our way. And I mean, then within 5 minutes, right, they were 2-1 up. So, you have to really credit Switzerland for being able to bounce back from that disappointment. Like, it's one challenge to come back in a match late on, but to do it after feeling as if it would have been easy for heads to have dropped. And we've seen some teams over the course of this tournament already where late on it's kind of felt like they sort of want to be anywhere else but on the pitch for the last few minutes, like the Dutch on Sunday, yesterday. Towards the end of that match, it just felt like they thought, this is over. Like you could have ended that match 10 minutes early, and I don't think they would have complained.
How much do you credit the Swiss for that comeback, and how much do you rip into the French side for conceding 2 goals in 10 minutes when all you have to do is just hold the line?
So I'll say two. We spoke about after France played Germany the fact that the Germans, and this is a warning for England, but the Germans looked like the only time they were getting any joy going forward was when they got the ball out wide. Switzerland probably watched that and realized that was always going to be their best chance. So for the first 2 Swiss goals, I just give them credit. It's just well worked moves, nice balls into the box, good finishes. I'm more critical of France for that third goal because, as good of a finish as it is from the Swiss player, the fact that a fairly straightforward ball has split their 2 central defenders and just put it in a position where a simple ball into feet has then allowed him to have an opportunity from the edge of the box right in the middle of the goal to produce a good finish, which he's then done. Like, there's no denying the fact that's not an easy goal to score, but that's terrible defending. I mean, if you're in that French dressing room now, I would be ripping apart the 2 central defenders and asking them what they were doing. And so there I blame the French a bit, but the Swiss had the disallowed goal before that. They had, it's not as if their equalizer kind of came out of nowhere. They were really piling on the pressure in the final 5 minutes, so they deserved it.
Yeah, and you could tell kind of going near the end of the second half, like the kind of everything was tiring up a bit, and French maybe looked better in extra time, kind of from an attacking point. But going back to your point about defense is interesting because when you've looked at these round of 16 games so far, like the Spanish tonight or Spanish earlier today, almost very similar match to what we just saw. They looked so bad from the centre backs. Like Croatia were just carving them open in terms of anything that was over the top, anything that was near them. It was really easy for Croatia. But then from the Croatian side of things, their fullbacks were getting torn apart. Like so much of it was just getting played down the wing. They were quite lazy. They didn't track back. And then you saw it with the Dutch the day before, where all of a sudden it was quite easy to just carve them open. Like even without the kind of going man down, like the Czechs was finding it really easy down the wings. And it's kind of interesting seeing these like bigger nations have these real kind of defensive frailties as they go through it. To be honest, it'll be interesting to see like what they do. Well, the French can't do anything about it now, but it'll be interesting to see what the Spanish do because well, I guess they're playing the Swiss now, so they can probably find something. But it's been interesting.
Spain doesn't worry me. If I'm Spain, it doesn't concern me too much because I think Spain will have figured out coming into this tournament that if they were going to have to live by the sword and die by the sword to a certain degree. They probably don't want to have quite as exciting of a match as they did against Croatia today, but I think they will know they're going to have to play open attacking football, and the downside to that is they're going to be open at the back too. The French, it's surprising because the thing you like to think of this France team because of the number of great attacking players that they have, and spoke about it before, they're not too dissimilar to England in that they're more defensive than you would think they would be on paper. And the thing that's made them so difficult to beat over the last, basically 5-6 years is the fact that they are very, very defensively solid. And so it's surprising to see against a mediocre European side, even if Switzerland now go on a run, we know the quality of player that they're fundamentally kind of throwing out there. It's surprising to see the French not being in pretty much total. Like, you could have told me this match had been going into it if you said France were going to be knocked out. I could have seen it either the Swiss nicked a goal and then France just failed to ever kind of get that goal to equalize, but dominated. Or you could have told me it was 1-1 and went to penalties, maybe even 2-2. The fact that they've conceded 3 in the 90 minutes to Switzerland, it's very, very surprising. But you know what, Sam's really building there. He's pointing out the weaknesses of these other big nations, but what that's really leading to is he wants to say now, doesn't that make you feel better about England? No. This is where he's going. He's going to it.
My point was going to be that I value the way Southgate has played against the 3 games so far more because of it. Like, that's what I will say. I'm not going to jinx it. So, question to you both. We had 14 goals today in 2 games. Do you think the tournament has lit up now? Or do you think it's a bit of a... We spoke about it when a couple of years ago in the Europa League final, Sevilla Inter, does lots of goals make it a good game? Or was France Switzerland a genuinely good game and the other game maybe just had lots of goals? Is this the start of the tournament?
The Spain-Croatia match. Spain just looked the much, much better side for most of it. And then they let Croatia back in. And then they looked a much, much better side in extra time. So it's kind of a weird one where people are like, well, how thrilling was this 8-goal match? So, well, it was only actually exciting for about 15 minutes. Like, most of the match, it looked like Spain were in kind of complete control. Whereas the Switzerland-France match, I think was a little bit different. Because even when France went 3-1 up, Switzerland still offered, you knew that they were going to maybe have a chance going forward. I didn't think they'd score the 2 they needed. I felt like that Pogba goal had killed it off. But you still just felt like maybe. I always think tournaments get exciting when you start to see some upsets. I think that wakes the tournament up a bit. I think it inspires. So if we had been in a situation where everything had gone chalk, which it was kind of doing, then you kind of start to feel as if, right, this is, everyone's been really critical of this tournament and the format and the 24 teams. And then now this has happened. And maybe that wasn't the case because you've just had a team that finished third.
Yeah. I also think just regardless of, like Eddie saying, whether you have a higher amount of teams or, like a more concentrated amount, once you get to a knockout stage of anything, when there's one goal between going home and moving on, the intensity just is so amplified that it can make even games that are less eventful than the Spain match or the France match, it still makes them exciting because if there's just one mess up, one bad play, a team is that close from tying it up or going out. The Italy match wasn't the greatest of matches, technically, but still you had Italy needing to go to extra time to win. You had the Belgium-Portugal match was not as exciting as the ones we watched today, but still the intensity was there where, like Ronaldo had that one free kick with a few minutes left. And,
No, Frank.
If you weren't...
Frank, I just got to say, it's now a rule. Ronaldo can't take a free kick without everyone reminding the rest of the world that Ronaldo isn't as good at free kicks as everyone thinks. It's like, which, look, we get it. We've all heard it. We've all seen the statistics.
It's like a Peter Crouch surprisingly good with his feet kind of fact.
It's like, and everyone has to say it at the moment, which is, I guess we won't hear it for the remainder of the tournament, thankfully. But you had to sit through it where everyone kind of like, well, you do know. Everyone thinks Ronaldo's good at free kicks, but he hasn't scored one in a long time. And it's like, yeah, we get it. Like and then people even throw out the advanced stats. So I saw that there was like the expected goal stat that came out with Ronaldo, which was, I think, over the last 3 seasons, his expected goals from free kicks should have been something like 8.6, but he's only scored 5 of them. So he's actually below average at free kicks. And it's like, well, that's all well and good, but you'd be pretty bold. Like when he's standing over with 3 minutes left, it's a different feeling to if he turned on and gone, hey, Renato Sanchez, you want to take this one? I'm not that good.
Yeah,
for sure. So, and actually, I think there's been no goal scored off a free kick still so far, right? Unless there was one today, because as of yesterday, there wasn't in the tournament so far.
And also, we got to then accept, I agree with you. I actually think the Belgium-Portugal match has been the best match of the tournament in many ways. That second half, Portugal looked really good, and they had Belgium on the back foot. They, and if one of those chances had gone in, I think Portugal would have gone through.
A point I thought was interesting as well is that obviously this is the 40th anniversary, so naturally they've got a lot of it kind of going over Europe. And what you saw over the past couple of days, I think, was quite interesting in terms of you had some of these clubs nations for the first time going away from their home kind of nation where they've played all the group games for the first time and struggling. So Italy, a really good example, played all 3 of them in Rome, then go away for the first time, struggle against Austria. You had the Dutch, first time, they go away, they struggle. You had the Spanish, which were kind of well regarded as having, I think it's like the least shots against them so far in the tournament. Until today, they go away from Spain for the first time. They then concede 3 and have quite a few shots against them. So I don't know what you're thinking from that stat, but I thought it was interesting. I mean, England are staying at Wembley tomorrow, but this will be the first game for the Germans that won't be in Munich. So anything to read into that, or is it just a stat that's kind of a fun one to say?
I think it's a meaningless stat. But I mean, like, look, I think teams would rather be at home, obviously, particularly with fans back in the stadium, and also just in terms of preparation and not having to travel and things. I'm sure it's nicer to be and have a stable base. But I think we've seen France is surprising, but in the case of the Netherlands, they came into this tournament with big question marks. I mean, when we did our tournament preview, right, we said they've got talented players, but how are they going to handle this step up in the pressure and the attention and needing to kind of, can you deliver, can you turn potential into real results? As it turns out, they couldn't. And so I don't think that's tied to them being away from home. I just think they're not that good. And, if you're Dutch, this is not, we've spoken about the golden generation of a couple teams. This is very much not the Dutch golden generation. I mean, there's some talented players in there, and 2 or 3 years from now, if a couple more come through, they might start to look really, really good. But, for a Dutch side in the past where they were bringing on superstars from Europe's top clubs and they desperately need a goal and they're bringing on a player who plays for Crystal Palace, it's all due respect to Crystal Palace, but it kind of, if England were bringing on Andros Townsend, I'd be concerned. So it's a sign of maybe a little bit where you are. That being said, I mean, Jack Grealish plays for Aston Villa, so you could kind of do exactly the same statement if England go out tomorrow.
Maybe not for long.
True. Yeah, soon to be a Manchester City player.
Now, I know this won't get released before the match tomorrow, but there's been a lot of good reaction to Eddie's England rant when they drew against Scotland. And I've had several people tell me that they've been accused of being psychotic fans. And then after having to listen to Eddie for 45 minutes, tear into every player, calling Luke Shaw a fat ass, amongst other things.
I just want to
that
clear
is
that
episode
up.
50. For those who haven't listened, it's definitely worth going back.
Season 2, episode 50. Yeah. Just to clear up, when I said I called him a fat ass, I mean specifically his ass is fat. It was.
Yes, sorry.
Well, yeah,
literally a fat ass.
Yeah, not that he is obese.
With that criticism you had, what are both of your feelings going in tomorrow?
I'm quietly confident, which is worrying. That's actually what bothers me more, is the fact that I feel I'm expecting England to win by a couple of goals. So I'm scared by
a team that scored 2 so far.
Yeah,
is going to win by a couple
against what is proven opposition now, right? It's like looking at a horse race, right? The Croat and Czech form has suddenly held better than some other people's forms.
Well,
France
and
Portugal are out, so the German form looks pretty bad.
That group of death might not have a single participant in the quarterfinals.
Group of death might be dead pretty soon.
Now, that's also worrying, right? Because there's the other element to that is Germany are kind of due, because it's inconceivable that this group of death has no one make it that one round further. As I said, I don't think there's anything to be scared about in this German side. I think that England are better pretty much all over the pitch, with a couple of areas, but I don't think it's worrying. It's just about, can they create chances and can they take them? Need Harry Kane to prove some doubters wrong tomorrow, because, and I really do, I will genuinely feel slightly sorry for him. If England go out tomorrow and he doesn't score, there will be a Harry Kane backlash. There will be a summer of, is Harry Kane as good as we thought he was? Like, is he a flat track bully? Should England look to have a more balanced side that doesn't run through this single player in the way that it kind of does?
I don't change my opinion. I think England have better depth, better players, and better talent to exploit the weaknesses in Germany's back line more than Germany has going the other way. I think England have shown themselves to be pretty defensively solid, and I think we've got plenty of attacking options. The fact that we haven't started Sancho, for example, and I those kind of things make me kind of more excited for what England could do. My opinion doesn't change. I think England are the better side. It's just that kind of be wary of the fact that Germany are a very good team and they have somewhat of a hoodoo over England for the past 50 years worth of tournament football, 60 years.
We can just say forever. Like, beating them in one World Cup final doesn't mean that they don't have a hoodoo.
I'm sure we have American listeners who are tuning in to listen to our interview with Dane Miller, which we'll get to in a little bit, and we'll maybe touch on some American sports. But my last question here is, it's more of a general, I guess, sports question. Tomorrow's match, do you watch alone or do you watch with a crowd? Now, we have the experience the last time I was in England for the World Cup, we got to watch the match all together at a bar, and it was awesome. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. But at the same time, when the team I'm most passionate about is playing an important match, I sometimes like to watch it in my house by myself with no one to give any other input than what, like, the psychotic things I'm thinking inside my head. So what do you guys go to for tomorrow?
For me, always a crowd. I will always try and be within a crowd of like-minded people, I guess, English fans, for the game. I just think that the highs are amplified, and obviously the lows, the bad problem with that is the lows are amplified as well. But I feel like if you do win, you create this instant memory of that moment, randomly celebrating with tons of people. Like, for me, one of the best England celebrations I had was when we beat Colombia in a penalty shootout, and we just
Surrounded by like-minded people, right?
Yeah, like I said, English fans. But when we all filed out into London Bridge, we started like dancing and celebrating in the streets. It was incredible. It was like an incredible moment, and I think you can't have that on your own. You can't have that on your own, right?
Sam. You could dance. You could dance down the street by yourself.
But it doesn't have the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same for me. And I would rather kind of heighten the losses if it means I can heighten the moment as well of success.
So, as you know, I'm pretty superstitious, and I've not
just brushing his teeth in the middle of the bar.
I've not had many...
Are you going to bring a toothbrush with you to the bar, Eddie?
Do you know what? I'll do it, just in case.
For those who don't know, Eddie believes his toothbrush has magical powers when need to be relied upon in crucial game match situations.
I'll put it
so
out
it might be
now.
worth sticking that in your pocket.
I'll put this out here now. If it goes to a penalty shootout, I will be in the bathroom brushing my teeth in the bar.
Of the bar.
No, I want you stood on the bar. Full on.
No. I want him in the bathroom of a bar, just brushing his teeth.
Yeah, just listening, because then I'll just have to react based on what I hear.
Just a live reaction of him on.
But yeah, so I'm a little superstitious. I feel like England tend to do better when I'm out in public. So there's that. And I will agree with Sam. Sometimes when you have the big win and you're kind of riding the high, but if you're by yourself at home, there's a kind of anticlimactic. Like, it feels almost sad because you're then like, well, that's over. And you're like, I guess I'll just go about my day now. Whereas at least if you're with people that kind of spill, there's some drinks get ordered and stuff, and you kind of get to enjoy that victory for a little bit more and not just accept the sad reality that fundamentally you have absolutely nothing to do with it. And the fact that you're getting any pleasure out of what a few random men do on a football pitch is kind of sad.
Yeah. And I guess the only downside to being out is you're going to have those, if it is a loss, you're going to have those annoying fans who, make ridiculous points or statements or, just sour the experience even more.
Oh, for me too. I fully accept. And I've watched England lose to Iceland in public. I've watched England lose, you not only have to deal with annoying fans who also support your team. I will have to do with the fact that people will openly enjoy England losing, because I think
kind of on the flip side of today.
Yeah, but I think the difference is, and this makes it seem so like England centered in terms of as if it is the center of the universe. But the downside to being an England supporter is virtually everyone enjoys England losing almost as much as they, and occasionally more than they enjoy.
Across sport.
Yeah.
Across sport as well. It's not just football.
And so I know that in France that everyone will be now supporting Germany tomorrow. And I know that if they lose, they will take great pleasure in that fact. Like Fundamentally, for me, the only reason why I care that France has gone out, I do think they're a bit cocky. I do think they needed to be brought back to earth a bit. And I also just look at it from the selfish perspective of it makes England's chances of winning the tournament that bit better now. If England get knocked out tomorrow, I will watch the remainder of the tournament and I'll hope for good games. I won't really care who wins, and I definitely won't take any satisfaction out of a team losing, because then it will really have no impact on me. But we'll see what happens. And I'm tired of the Ronaldo free kick storyline. There's one other storyline I do not need to be told repeatedly, which is, Germans don't really care about this fixture. I don't need to be told that it's a one-way rivalry. That's fine. I know that Germany would care much more if they were playing the Netherlands or if they were playing Italy, maybe even if they were playing France, just because of the number of times they've played them in significant matches, or in the case of the Netherlands, because of their geographical rivalry. But it doesn't make me care less to have you say that the Germans don't care. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't make it any less satisfying to care a lot yourself.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But they do care. We know that, and this I don't know.
No, Sam. I have to, Sam. I got to correct you here. Don't then do this English thing. On the scale of how much they care, obviously they're going to want to win in a major championship. But on the scale of nations they have rivalries with, they really don't care about playing England. They don't. They don't do it. Speak to Germans. They really don't care. They don't see this is a very, England see 2 world wars and 1 World Cup. Germany just see, you're that team we usually beat when we turn up to a World Cup.
Is that because they don't want to remember the 2 world wars?
No, I think they just don't want to remember losing them. They fondly remember right up until the defeat.
They remember the invasions and the occupancies.
Yeah, they often gather around the fire and talk about the Blitzkrieg. They love that bit. But,
the Blitzkrieg Pop.
Exactly. But as soon as they
get fans that song.
You can happily talk to Germans about 39 to 43. But after 43, it becomes a little bit risky.
Just a bit blurry.
Yeah. Same, you want to talk 1914 to 1916? Great times. Great times. They were riding a high.
So if you had to choose between being home or being out at the bar, you're going to choose the bar. What if you had the option of watching a very important match or game, whatever team you're supporting, there at the actual match or in a bar watching it? What would you choose?
I might lean towards the bar, because the sad thing of the match is you still have that moment where you gotta file out and leave a stadium, and that's a pain even if you've won. That is a downer.
It delays the celebrating too, right? Because you're at least delaying an hour and a half of you getting out of there, getting on whatever train, car you need to go to, and then get to the place where you can start celebrating again.
And similarly, if you've then lost, that's a depressing experience of now I gotta walk, get on public transport, kind of process everything I'm doing while I sit on a train, a packed train, surrounded by a bunch of other
spit
people.
On.
Probably watching the other fans celebrating as well at some point, which obviously makes it worse. I think the only one I would ever do differently is the final. I think it would be incredible to be there, because you can say you've been in that moment, and I think that's a really cool thing to have. But ultimately, I agree. I think all you're doing at a stadium is just delaying the ability to go to a bar later on.
I think it'd be neat to go to an important match that you didn't have a huge vested interest in. If you just went to a Stanley Cup Game 7 game, and got to watch it and didn't really care who won, but just got to get involved with the excitement of it. I think that would be better than if it was your team.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think if I had the choice of going to a World Cup final, I'd rather just go to a World Cup final and not have England be there. And so I could just enjoy the spectacle, pick a team I kind of wanted to win, but not really care, interact with fans as a neutral. So that also changes that dynamic, right? Particularly in football. I mean, my only experience of a major final in that respect was I went to watch the 2007 Rugby World Cup final, which England lost to South Africa. That was, wasn't the most fun ever.
So speaking of big games, that we could watch, I am could potentially go watch an NBA Finals game if I wanted to. I'm getting close to being in the near vicinity of a game being played with the Phoenix Suns 1 win away from making the NBA championship. And for those who are new to listening, Sam picked them way back at the beginning of the season. So he is now a Fairweather Suns fan.
Whoa. I didn't need that. I didn't need the caveat. Well, I mean, are you going to go? Is it easy to go?
Probably. I have to imagine. Well, I know that they're selling out full capacity, which is pretty neat. So at least the tickets wouldn't be as expensive if they were doing like the 20%. But I have to imagine in Phoenix, which is a pretty expensive city, those tickets are going to be a hefty chunk. I will say I watched the last game with the group of people, and it was, I mean, people were getting into it. I did not think Arizona even had Suns fans, but pretty much the party stopped with about 3 minutes left, and everyone just surrounded the TV and was watching the last, 3 game minutes, but let's say last 30 minutes in real time.
35 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I mean, look, it feels like a slightly disappointing NBA Finals because it's one that's just been defined, playoffs, one that's just been defined by injuries. And that's always, and I feel bad saying that because I don't want it to feel like to take something away from the Suns or from the Bucks if they make it, but it just feels like both the Eastern and the Western Conference, maybe the best team there on paper is no longer involved. And most of the superstars were eliminated earlier, mostly because of injuries on their teams, either to the superstars themselves or just to another key player. So it's a little bit of a disappointing playoffs, but.
And another, I know we bring this up multiple times, but it still just continues to blow my mind. The end of that Suns game, the missed free throws that could have potentially put the Clippers back into it, but missed free throws by good players. I don't get it. I will never understand how they're not 95%.
Well, the big one is that they won't shoot underarm, right? That's like
shout out to Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, but I mean, you're supposed to be shooting. It's the better angle and the more reliable shooting motion. So if they put their egos aside and just were swinging it through their legs, they might not be missing them.
Oh, well, they might be swinging it through their legs, but are they shooting it through their legs?
Sam?
No comment.
And look, also talk about another team or athlete that's been mentioned on the podcast quite significantly before, but good weekend for the Suns. Not a good day today for Stefanos Tsitsipas, who was knocked out in the opening round of Wimbledon. Quite a surprise, coming off his French Open final defeat. He's now lost 6 sets in a row from being 2 sets up against in Grand Slams, from being 2 sets up against Djokovic in that final. So it really feels as if those kind of sliding doors moments you have in your careers, he may have experienced one.
You just chalk that up to fatigue, a little hangover from losing the finals.
Maybe. Look, it's always difficult to transition from clay to grass. It's not easy. His game isn't as suited to grass play as you would expect, even though he has all of the components that should make him a really, really good grass player. The way his feet land after his serve makes it very, very difficult. His front foot, so his left foot, doesn't land facing the net, which makes it very, very difficult for him to serve and volley, which, even though in the modern game people don't serve and volley that much, but once you kind of remove it as an effective weapon on grass, it's a bit of a shame. So, which it's just surprising because you'd feel like he could fix that in a couple of months of work, just tweaking the angle of that foot opens at. But yeah, he was not one of the favorites for the tournament. I didn't expect him I didn't expect him to lose in the opening round against a very much known quantity. I think that's the surprising bit.
And Sam's other big prediction starts today as well. Sam predicted the Montreal Canadiens to make it to the Stanley Cup final, but then to lose. And game 1 kicks off tonight. So that would be a phenomenal prediction by Sam, the squid, I'll have to say.
I'd be happy with it, for sure.
I'll even help you out, Sam, and I'll say I think there's no way the Canadiens win.
Even after the run, there's no way.
No, they are not getting past the Lightning. Now, I don't know if that's a Duca curse or a reverse Duca curse, but either way, me making a definitive statement on this series has got to help everyone else involved. So,
yeah, I don't even know. I've got sound effects, by the way, new sound effects to throw in for your Duca curse. So,
but whenever I say Duca curse,
no, just whenever one loses. But
womp, womp, womp.
Pretty much, Sam. But
way to spoil the sound effects.
Look, I can throw this out to the listeners. This is our second episode of season 3. We had decided that we were going to try and change the theme song for season 3 and mix it up each season. I've tried to find a new intro, and I actually haven't found one that I like as much. So season 3 has started with the same intro music still. But if anyone has a suggestion, if anyone out there listening wants to make, I think please only do it if you have musical talent. Like I don't want to be listening to just absolutely
unless you're open to being ridiculed when we play it live
by name.
By name.
Location where you are, tagged. Yeah.
I don't want to get it submitted anonymously and then it just be garbage. And by that I don't mean
you mean the band?
Oh, yeah, okay. Even then I wouldn't choose it. But
without that, I guess I'll talk to you boys later and we'll head into the interview.
Yeah, I mean I won't say goodbye because people are about to hear us. But yeah, see you in a second.
Cheerio over there in a second.
Hello, everyone. We are now joined with Dane Miller, owner of Garage Strength and coach to several Olympians, a bunch of Olympic qualifiers and trial contestants, as well as a bunch of junior national champions. Also have helped coach a lot of USA weightlifting competitions, right? So Thanks for joining us and excited to talk some Olympic training.
Thank you for having me. It's 5, by the way, 5 Olympians this year.
5 now. Wow. So I guess let's start off with that question. Did you ever think 10, 15 years ago that you would be saying now that you've trained 5 Olympians at your age?
I think so, mainly because I was such an egotistical asshole.
That's a good answer.
I think a lot of people have said that to me, even about the gym. Like when you were at your parents' garage and you had 400 square feet, did you ever think you'd be where you are now? And I'm always like, yeah, I always thought I could do it. I always thought, and I know it sounds absurd. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know the path, but I thought I could do it, mainly because I was stupid. But I think, and I'm not even joking when I say that. It's like I always thought I could do it. I didn't know, as far as coaching is concerned, I didn't know, what would get me certain points to getting to the point where we have a couple, especially athletes from 5 different countries even. So I think that's where it got a little interesting. But I don't know. I know it sounds hokey, but I always did believe in my ability as a coach to get to that point. But looking back, I probably shouldn't have.
No, I think that makes sense. And it's probably when we've spoken to people in the past too, I think that's often an integral part of success, right? Is just this belief that might be unfounded. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who failed who thought the whole time that they were going to be successful, but maybe it's like a key part of succeeding. So when you say you say you've got athletes now from different countries, how are they approaching you then? And then how much are you working with them? So are they moving to be based in the US, or is it just you're kind of working with them for specific periods of time?
It's a little bit of both. It's like I mean, I can tell you was the discus thrower that we had qualify on Friday from the U.S. He's moved to Reading, and so he was I worked with him his senior year at Penn and he was an NCAA champion. So he and I started to work together pretty early. And the first meet I coached him at was actually the Olympic trials in 2016, and he was the second best qualifier, and he did not perform well. And we've had sort of a crazy journey where he's been with me since I was at a barn, training in the snow, just doing crazy stuff. So that was with Sam Mattis, and then 2017. So I'll go through a couple of them. Another one of the shot putters is Canadian. He actually lives in Leesport, or where the gym is. He's come down. Yeah, he'll come down for spurts because he's got a little bit better financial support from Athletics Canada. So like right now he's been down for about like 14 weeks, and especially once the border opened, he came down, and then like 3 days later it closed again. So he sort of timed it really well. And there's a Samoan that I train who's based out of Michigan that he just DM'd me in 2015. And he was terrible. He was like a 57-meter discus thrower, and I started to work with him, online. And he comes out for training camps like 6 or 7 times a year, and now he's the number 4 guy in the world. He's thrown 67-50, which is like over 220 feet in the discus. And subsequently, because of him, and because of Sam, I have a Nigerian female who's based out of Michigan that I met at a meet with Alex like 3 years ago. And so I've been working with her. We've been to world champs together in 2019, and then 2020 happened. And then now here we are, and she's number 17 in the world. And then as far as the last one is a guy named Jason Van Rooyen. He's based out of South Africa. I've never actually even met him, and I worked with his former training partner for about 3 years, Orazio Cremona, who was the first shot putter I ever coached that threw 70 feet. And Orazio had gotten South Africa to fund me to go to World Champs in 2019, and then after he and I hung out for a while, he sort of convinced this younger guy to sort of jump on board. And it's interesting because it's such a unique way to coach somebody, where like some of my guys are with me all the time and some of them are farther away. So it's a different perspective, but it's like learning different intricacies of them and just how they respond to cues and then how they handle stress. And I think it takes a special person to handle that sort of digital coaching, but if they're wired properly, they can be really successful.
So just to kind of add to that, when these people approach you and you kind of hear their story, hear what their situation is, what they need doing, do you have to kind of assess them and judge them in a way to understand if it's worthwhile for you, or do you kind of believe there's gains to be had with everyone and you can kind of help them with that?
That's a good question. That's a really good question, because I'd say it's early on. I would coach anybody. I would take fucking anyone. By the way, you should tell me if I'm allowed to swear.
You can swear. Yeah, it's fine.
Keep going.
Don't worry.
Keep going.
There's nothing you can say that's worse than's already been said. So go for it.
So early on, I would coach anyone, and I would just go as hard as I possibly could with coaching. And I think that's one thing with me, is that I'm always just constantly on the go, and I think that that's beneficial as far as earlier in my career, and now, especially at my gym. On site at the gym, I used to look at I still do, every single kid that comes into the gym could be like the next Olympian or the next state champ or the next All-American, whatever it might be that they're into. But now that we've grown so much, and when somebody does contact us, it's more like, all right, we have like this internal ranking system, and we send them an email that they fill out, and we call it like 9 levels to become a master of a sport. And then when they send it back, we have an equation that basically tells us like, all right, this guy's a 60 out of 72. He's pretty good. Or this guy's like a 40 out of 72. Like, hey, Tamand or Trevor, can you guys train this guy? And then I'll deal with these other athletes. And it's sort of similar to what we would do on site. And it's just, I think that I'm at the point now where I have to do that. Otherwise I will get bogged down, because you get to the point where some athletes are a lot more like you've got to like rub their back. You got to tell them everything's going to be okay. You got to tell them they're going to be the best. And oftentimes, like, I'll only do that to certain people if they're at a certain level. So it is important to sort of wade through where everybody is and basically say, like, look, like, this is your current level. This is how we're going to work with you, and then this is how we're going to get you to that next spot. Because then we can also see, like, all right, once they get to a certain level, then I can start to give them even more attention to like the little details.
So what score do I have to get daily back rubs from you?
110%, 74.
And
Frank,
so
your score would probably be high too. That's the funny part.
oh, well, there we go. So is that system, that scoring system, that's unique to you and your group of trainers?
Yeah, so I had trained with a guy with a Soviet coach in 2007 and 2008, and he was a master of, they called, so in the Soviet Union they had this thing called master of sport. It was like they had certain levels to get to, like there was like 3 levels. There might have been more than that, but I just remember him talking about it. And there was, once you became that master of sport, it was like you've made international teams, or you're like a world class athlete. And so what we've done is we sort of stole that concept, because I always, it's like getting a black belt in some type of martial arts. It's like, I think those are cool steps that you can take in different sports. It sort of like bridges you along, because it is such a long journey and such a long grind. So we sort of stole that, and we have different exercises that we value, and then we place a value on them, and then establish where they're at. And it sort of helps us with the kids on site, and even on top of that, it actually helps. So we have to get to train with me. If you train on site, I only work with the throwers, the weightlifters, specific wrestlers, and specific football players. And so, like, to get into work with me, you've got to score high enough to get into that group, or be like best friends with one of the best kids to get into the group. So it's sort of like a way that we can gauge people, like, hey, you don't get to work with Dane because you're only scoring a 45. And it sounds a little pretentious, but then it's sort of like, it's like a way that people are like, oh, fuck, man, like, if I score a 55, then I'm only this much closer. So it's sort of I don't know, it's a unique way. And then once you are in that top 65 to 72% or point scoring, it's like, well, now we know they're going to be really good.
So with that, if you work yourself up as you kind of go through the coaching, do you change coach, or does it make sense just to stick with the coach throughout that's kind of been with you?
Typically they will change to me. Yeah. So we have right now, like, at the gym, there's 5 of us, and I would say 2 of them. So my like throws coach assistant, and then one of my like sports performance guys who's an assistant, who's actually a shot putter too. Um, those 2 guys are extremely good, and they could be elite level coaches for sure. Like, they can 100%. In fact, Trevor, the throws guy, he's the main coach for our girl who just broke this state record in Pennsylvania, in the shot and in the discus. But it's still like, they still just want to pass everybody on to me once they get to a certain point. When his athletes graduate high school, if they come back and they're elite level throwers, they get to train with my group. And that's sort of like it's like the rite of passage, really. It's like, all right, I'm in college, I'm throwing over 18 meters. Now I get to go throw with Dane. Or I'm a female, I'm throwing 17 meters. Now I get to train with Dane. And it is sort of like a unique situation, because then they're in a better group too. They're around the pro athletes, and it's a little bit more of you're not training as much with like the 6th and 7th and 8th graders that are talking while you're actually trying to get your work done.
Yeah, so I mean, you've mentioned a few times now, all of your Olympians so far have been throwers, and you're training a lot of throwers. So I think maybe we should go back to your career, and it'll be interesting for you to discuss your sports career, where you came from, what you did, and then kind of your journey on going. You mentioned Bondarchuk and going up there into Canada and training with him, and what was that experience like, and how you went from being an athlete to kind of grasping it and taking it all in and becoming the coach that you are now? I think that'd be super interesting for everyone to hear.
Yeah, so I was a shot putter and I wrestled and I was a football player in high school and I threw well enough in high school that I went to throw at Penn State with Frank. Um, and I think that like part of my biggest I've always been and Frank would know this, I've always been into sports performance and training and training methodologies. And I'll actually share stories of like the Jay Schroeder DVD that we had and like just going on websites like way back in the day and printing up all this shit and just trying to really get into to training. And so I was into like the actual science behind it really, really early on. And I think part of what I missed out on was because I was always into like that physical side. And I was a pretty good athlete. I was explosive. I was strong. But where I lacked was my mental capacity. Really, is handling stress and handling um, alcohol, shit like that. So it was like for me, I went through college and I had my first 2 years. I did really well, and then I sort of just petered around. And I didn't. Looking back, I oftentimes am like, if I had me as a coach, I probably would have hated me as an athlete, but I know how I would have handled myself. And I think as a coach, I know it sounds weird, but I think that like when I graduated from Penn State and I didn't do what I wanted to do, and then I sought out Anatoly Bondarchuk and I went up to train with him. I had a main goal was like I had gotten into Temple. I was going to go there to get my master's degree, and I could go there and be a religious studies professor over time if I continued to get my PhD. But I didn't. I I just knew what I wanted to do was more around sports, and I think that the fact that I didn't pan out as an athlete the way I had envisioned and I believed that I could have, I constantly wanted to figure out like why did I just not do what I wanted to do? And I knew most of the reasons why weren't physical. It was deeper. And I think that training with Dr. B sort of showed me like it is a lot physical, but it is predominantly my mental approach and how I was as an athlete. So I think that the other benefit of being a thrower is that throwing training for the throws is I would argue like one of the absolute best ways to train athletes in general because you're training people to be extremely explosive, extremely fast, mobile. Like throwers outside of gymnasts are the most explosive athletes in the world, and so that actually got me into coaching weightlifting by accident um, as early on in my career. So it was like I think from my athletic perspective, one of the things that I've really tried to focus on is mental health per se, I guess it would be, is like how to get one athletes to deal with their own mental issues, whatever that might be, so that they can keep hammering physically, but also just how to teach them how to manage their stress so that when they're in situations that are like the Olympic trials, they can compete to where they need to be physically. They're not being hindered by their mental aspect, their mental game. So I think that's sort of what motivated me the most as a coach was like, why did I not, why was I not an All American? I'm just as athletic as all these other guys, but it was mainly because I wasn't. No one ever grabbed me by the neck and said like, Dane, you're fucking this up right now. You're a turd. And I think that was like my main inspiration early on. And then I think that over time, as each athlete came through, I tried to treat each athlete as like an experiment for the next one. And whoever came early on, I trained them as well as I could, but each one is making me better so that in 10 years from now, I can just continuously learn and continuously get better. And I think that's the main point because I don't, not that our college coach was bad, but I think that he missed the boat on certain things as a coach, as like a guide for somebody to really bring out the best in somebody as an athlete. I don't know
Are
if that
you?
answers your question.
Yeah. Are you then almost? This is tough because obviously in an ideal situation you'd be great at both. But are you almost pleased then to have not failed as an athlete, but to have had these areas that maybe held you back and prevented you from getting to that potential, in the sense that it makes you a better coach. I mean, we've spoken to people in the past, and you just see for coaches where they see that when you do take high level athletes and then they try and coach people who are not as gifted as they were, it can be a challenge for them in the sense that they don't get why they don't get it. If you see what I mean, like, because for them,
sure.
it was second nature. And then it's like, why is this
It's
a
like,
challenge
why
for
doesn't
you?
this kid understand how to back squat? Like, how does he not know how to back squat? Is he that big of a turd? It's
Exactly.
like that. That's classic. I think for me, I've always struggled with, as far as like movement perspective. I think if you can approach it as logically as possible, I don't think that question. Like, I've always struggled how some coaches who are like world class, they don't know how to peak athletes really well, and sometimes I actually think it's because they didn't know how they were even peaking well when they were competing. Um, I think for me being not that I was like I was a good coordinated athlete. I think that my poor performances and my poor development, I actually think it's made me like, I think it's key to me being as successful as I've been, because it's sort of been like a chip on my shoulder. Like I have, right now I'm one of maybe four privatized private training centers for throwing in the U.S. And I would say out of the Olympic weightlifting gyms, I would say I'm a top three gym in the U.S. And especially where we're located, we're in sort of in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. Like, a lot of these other guys are in like really big urban areas. So I think being an underachieving athlete, I think, has motivated me more to learn to prevent that from happening. Like, seeing someone else's capability and knowing, I think a key component is knowing what people are capable of before they know. And I think that was like the big problem with me as an athlete in college, is like, I don't think my coach knew what the fuck I was capable of. Like, and knowing the athletes I train now, and knowing their numbers in the weight room, and knowing their numbers with like different movements, jumps and stuff like that, I'm like, dude, Tamont, one of my guys, Tamont's throwing 2087, and I was still stronger than him in college. And it's like, what the fuck was I doing? But I think that's where that's been like that's put that chip on my shoulder, and it's also put it to the point where it's like, all right, I'm not a world champ. I'm not Ryan Whiting, who does have his own gym, his own center, or group at least, and he's gotten a lot of really top notch talent because of what he accomplished as an athlete, and that's great. Like, I think he's doing a really, really good job. But for me, it's actually like, I want to prove to people constantly, like, hey, and this is an insecurity of mine, I want to prove to people who the fuck I am and how good I am as a coach. And I think that's one of my main motivators, as sad as that can be at times.
No, I mean, that makes definite sense. And then I think coming off of that, probably having to prove something, you said you kind of fell into Olympic weightlifting coaching, and
Yeah.
you said now you have one of the top gyms. So I'm assuming that was kind of also part of it, where you're a thrower and then stepping into a completely new arena and trying to prove to everyone that you can coach a sport that you didn't compete at a competitive level. But how fun has that experience been, kind of transitioning into also being an Olympic weightlifting coach, and kind of what are some of the highs and lows, I guess, that you've gone through in that, and transitioning into that?
I think that this is my favorite story, is well, one of my favorite stories is that my first meet was 2012. The first meet I coached somebody at, he was 15 years old, and it was the night of the opening ceremonies in London. In 2016, I was coaching Norik Vardanian at the 2016 Olympic trials, and I think that so I'm saying, like, in that 4-year time frame, I went from never coaching at a meet to coaching at the U.S. Olympic trials to coaching the guy who's second on the team. And I think that quick sort of like rise, one was because I trained my weightlifters similar to how I trained in Dr. B's training system, and nobody still really understands that, like, outside of our group. But also, um, being a thrower, you have to have a technical mindset with your how you're executing the throw. And a lot of weightlifters at the time, early on, they was like, oh, if I increase my back squat, I'm gonna get stronger. If I increase my front squat, I'm gonna get stronger. But nobody was saying like, if I do this with my knees, if I do this with my hips, if I do this with my feet, I'm gonna move more precisely so I can utilize my strength more effectively. Nobody was really saying that. So I think having that technical aspect from throwing and bringing that into the world of weightlifting, and on top of that, I didn't know anybody in weightlifting, so I didn't give a fuck who I was competing against. Like early on, I would be in the back, like stealing people's clocks. Like I figured out all the strategic stuff to weightlifting, and I would steal like Dave Spitz, who runs Cal Strength. Like I'd steal his clock all day, and people would be like, "Dude, you're stealing Dave's clock." I'm like, dude, I'm here to fucking win. That's all I give a shit about. I'm not here to like rub Dave's back and tell him he's my favorite guy that I watch on YouTube. Like I don't give a fuck. And I think that attitude was big. And throwing or weightlifting is like it can be like this. It's almost like tennis sometimes, where it's just like it's such this. It's like a mixture. Like if you watch tennis, you don't really cheer until after the point is scored or whatever. It's like sometimes, like I look at wrestling the way I look at weightlifting the way I look at wrestling. It's a grind. It's hard as fuck. You got to train all the time, and it's miserable. But the emotional experience when you hit something big, when you hit a big lift, is phenomenal. So that's why everybody does it. It's like this drug that you're just constantly, and it's like that's like throwing. But what I brought, I think, was like I bring that same throwing intensity to weightlifting. So I'm like going ape shit. I'm fucking talking shit in the back and really hyping people up. And I think that really changed the perspective or like that persona of weightlifting to a point. Not dramatically, but I think a lot of people were like, who is this lunatic just screaming when their athletes are hitting big lifts? And I think that I don't know. I think that was like that big motivator that I just looked at the sport sort of the way I looked at throwing, the way I looked at wrestling too, and the way I look at football. And honestly, outside of track and field, weightlifting has gotten me all like every single continent in the world. I've gotten to spend months with Piros Dimas just chilling with him and like talking to him about training all the time. And this is a guy that I used to idolize as an athlete. And now like he has his own nickname for me and we get to chill and drink whiskey and talk shit about how he's, one of the best weightlifters of all time. And it's like, I don't know. I think that the rise in weightlifting was extremely enjoyable and extremely fun, mainly because it was like I came into the sport. No one knew who I was. I wasn't a weightlifter. I had never competed. All my athletes were whooping everybody's ass. And I basically just put a flag down and said, like, look, I'm going to build this thing and I don't give a fuck who all of you are, what teams you made, what Olympics you went to, because I will still whoop your ass with my athletes. And I think that's, that was fun.
That's quite the statement. Yeah. How then when you're training players like in different for preparing for different sports, and you said that you feel like the fundamentals of throwers are the most explosive, like how similar are their kind of training programs then, and like what percentage of the program is different for say a weightlifter versus a shot putter versus when you're working with say a football player?
I would say so. If we would look at it like weightlifting is almost always going to be specific technical work and strength work. So we'll do, if just a generic day would be like snatch, clean, jerk, squat. Next day might be power snatch, block, cleans, and then a pull. Weightlifting is going to be like over here, but when I train my football guys or my wrestlers or my throwers, it's almost always like if we're doing like I break it up into we have a leg day, an upper body day, and then we call it an athlete day, so like more like plyometric work, and then we just repeat leg day, upper body day. And if we're training throwers, it's going to be a heavy leg day with at least one Olympic lift, so like a snatch or a clean, and then a strength lift, and then an accessory very specific to the sport of the thrower. And if that was a football player, it might be one box clean that would be heavy, or a single leg squat for their strength movement, and then the accessory that's specific to that individual's position. So like running back, like we have a kid right now who's actually just got back from a visit from Alabama. He's like the number one running back in the country right now, and it's like somebody like him, it's going to be a clean, it's going to be a single leg squat, it's going to be something to improve his hip mobility and his ankle mobility so he can cut a little bit harder. He's a little more stable when he cuts, and he can handle hits from different angles because of his mobility. So it's like fixing certain hip issues that he might have. So we might use like a Cossack squat or something. I don't know if you know what that is, but like almost like a side to side squat to open up his hips. So it's like the throwing template is very similar. And even on an upper body day, we'll do like jerks and then we'll bench, or we'll do an incline bench or something along those lines. So the throwing template is essentially what we utilize with almost all of our athletes. And then what changes is just those accessories and the strength movements and the volume, like the frequency of them training. You know, football kids in high school, they might only train 4 days a week, but my thrower is going to train 6 days a week. So it's like that's where it'll change a little bit.
You mentioned like the sports specific training, the strength training, etc. Do you get involved in the kind of nutritional side, the lifestyle side? Do you bring people in that help you as part of a team? Because what was interesting that you mentioned earlier was, you know, when you, back in your day of training, it was just like, do this, get stronger. But then you started mentioning like the science behind it as well, like, you know, adjust your knee to this dimension, get it to this. So do you bring more people into your team to help with the other side of things as well? Or is it very much kind of one man band when they're under your wing training?
Well, I would say for nutrition, it's us. It's myself and Trevor. Actually, he's the other throws coach. That he has a master's degree in like sports nutrition, which is sort of bullshit, but he has a good idea. And I have a pretty solid idea as well with timing and specific needs for women, you know, like what nutritional needs they need at certain points of their menstruation versus men, and what needs like an athlete who is more focused on relative strengths, like a weightlifter versus a football player who might be an offensive lineman, and just changing that nutritional perspective. But we have an outside guy named the Mobility Doc, and he's a DPT, so he's a doctor of physical therapy, which basically means he has a master's in physical therapy. But he's also a chiropractor, and he uses Graston and a lot of different various forms of manipulation, like joint manipulation, to help deal with structural integrity or structural balance. So because weightlifting, football, wrestling, throwing, all these sports tend to like dominate one side, especially throwers will have a lot of lower back issues to their non-dominant side. So it's like John, the mobility doc, does like all of that structural work. And with weightlifters, because they split jerk, a lot of our guys split jerk, and women split jerk. So it's like they'll also have that same structural imbalance issues as well. And that might show up with their shoulder problems or their hip or knee. And we do use somebody outside for stuff like that. But for nutrition, it's mainly almost entirely internal that we do all the nutritional work.
I guess getting back to the weightlifting part, I have to say I'm jealous you now have a relationship with Piros Dimas. I remember us watching Piros Dimas all the time when we were throwing as a way to like motivate ourselves, because he was just so intense and just so explosive. So that's awesome, and appreciate it. Now, I mean that's a great story in itself, but from what I've seen over the past few years, since you said you have risen the ranks, you've got to be able to coach your athletes as well as U.S. on the whole in a lot of really interesting countries, because Olympic weightlifting is very popular in a lot of, I guess, the more non-traditional Olympic countries where most medals are being won. So what are some funny or good experiences you've had from traveling to countries like Uzbekistan and all these other places?
I wanted to share this. I don't know if I have my phone on me. I could show you a picture. Yeah, I was going to tell you that. So the last time I was in Uzbekistan, and this is where it gets interesting because you go to a place like Uzbekistan. I went there in 2018, and I had no comprehension of their history at all. Like other than the fact that they're Central Asian, there's a large historical influence from Genghis Khan and a large historical influence from um, like like an Islamic influence. So people there, the way they look like Asian versions of me, like not truly Asian, but you can tell there's a little bit of Asian in them. And it's like I didn't fully understand it. So then when I went back, I just got back. I hadn't understood that in 20, I think it was 2015, they had this dictator who died. And when he died, the next guy that came in actually opened the country up. So prior to that, they were like North Korea, Turkmenistan, and Myanmar. And so when I was there in 2018, they were literally just like recovering from this dictatorship, basically, and they had opened it up, and their economy was starting to take off. And now I just got back, and it was I had seen in 3 years. I was like, holy shit, this place is like really really cool. Now they still have some issues, but my favorite story in Uzbekistan was that they wanted, because I was there for like 10 days. They wanted to charge me like everything was dirt cheap. Everything's so cheap there, and they wanted to charge me like $75 American to do my laundry. And I was like, "There's no way I'm paying that." So I went to a grocery store and I bought clotheslines, and I washed all my clothes in my bathtub. And the only reason I'm really sharing this is because Dimas posted this on his Facebook. He was like, "This is like the funniest story I've ever heard." So I washed all the clothes, I put it in a bag, and I go across the street and I strung, and we're like downtown Tashkent. I strung on trees these clotheslines, and I tied it, and I had my clothespins, and I hung it's really hot there, so I hung my clothing up, and I'm just waiting for it to dry. So while it was drying, I was working out on the side of the road of this highway, and all of a sudden, this manager of the hotel comes sprinting across. He's like, "Sir, Mr. Miller, sir, you have to take down this clothing. Like, you could get arrested here." And I was like, "Dude, I'm not taking the clothing down. You want to charge me $75 to fucking dry my clothes? Like, that's bullshit." So he didn't know what I was saying. So he went and got the translator, and he's like, Dane, you can't do this here. Like, you could get thrown in jail." And I was like, "Dude, I'm not taking it down because of how much they're trying to charge me to dry my clothes." And so he translated to the other guy, and the other guy goes, like, just starts yelling at him. And the other guy translates it back to me, and he's like, "He said they'll do your laundry for free." And I was like, "All right, but one deal. You have to take my picture here." So I made them take my picture with all my clothes hung up. And I had been there with Dimas, and he didn't know this. And then when I showed him the picture, he's like, "What the fuck are you doing, you idiot?" But yeah, I mean, I just like that story. Anyway, I think I'm trying to think of some other good ones. I mean, I've been like, it's just neat. It's my first experience was going to a place like Malaysia, and I never, we had spent some time in Singapore and in Malaysia, and I had never thought I'd ever go to Malaysia. And when you get there, it's like, this place is fucking cool. And I think that's the really cool part with weightlifting is you go to a country like Uzbekistan. I told Caitlin this when I got home. It's like, I would take my family there. Like, it's actually like a unique place that has a ton of history. And it's also, now that they're opened up, it's you can see that it's growing. And I think that, going to the different places like Guatemala, Dominican Republic, I don't know if I even mentioned Ecuador. I've been to Tokyo like 3 times. Just all those unique places. It's like, it offers the athletes another added variant to their growth as an individual. And I think that that's the biggest thing as coaches. It's like, dude, it's all great that we're training, like I'm training them to go to the Olympics and to snatch more, clean more, or bench more, or squat more, whatever. But why are we doing this? Like, and I think a lot of coaches forget. I'm doing it for that experience to help them learn and become more responsible human beings so that they can actually engage and learn and value all of these lessons that life does provide. And I think that that's the one cool part is that, I've taken 6 kids to Uzbekistan now, or 5 kids to Uzbekistan, and they're all been like, dude, they would have never gone to Uzbekistan. And now they go to a Central Asian country that's predominantly Muslim, and it's like, wow, this place is actually cool. Whereas the typical person would hear that country's name and be like, what the hell are you going there for? So I think it's a unique sport that, and it's the same thing. Like when I like with track, it's pretty similar. I mean, we were in Doha in 2019. It's just neat to travel to see these places because I think it does open up the athletes' minds into things that they can benefit from that aren't just like specifically sport related, that they can then use later on as a tool in whatever they do, after their sporting career is over.
No, I think that's a really valid point. And that's something that we've had people touch on before. I do think it's a slight shame. I think it would have been nice if you had some major international incident because of you trying to dry your washing. I think that would have been great.
Yeah. Well, the other problem was in 2018 when we were there, the World Cup was going on. And there's been some like really, really cool times. One of them was in Ecuador where like we had one of our guys spoke Spanish. So we went out, we were out till like 4 a.m. and it was just like, it's so cool to just party in other countries too. Cause you're just, I don't know, it's neat. You're around a whole different perspective. As far as international affairs though, I haven't really had any serious run-ins.
Well, maybe will you be going to Tokyo if it goes ahead?
Actually I just got my tickets today. Literally like about 2 hours ago. I just got my tickets. We're leaving July 22nd. So I could probably pull something off there from an international perspective.
Yeah, it could be really make headlines.
Yeah, COVID will take a backseat to Dane's international washer and dryer affair. So I have to ask, before they probably have a more serious question, having known you for a long time, I know you hate to fly. Yeah. So how on earth have you been able to mentally grasp flying to these faraway countries on such a consistent basis?
Yeah, it's funny because I still struggle with it. I mean, honestly, my first answer is, dude, I had to go to therapy for a fucking long time, and I think that's also something that triggered me realizing a lot of different things with my athletes. Was like, I think a lot more people should go to fucking therapy. Is where I was going with that. Is like it opened me up to like, wow, I have this. It took. I didn't fly from 2008. It was like February of 2008 until June of 2016. So I didn't fly for 8 years, and I was like, my wife went to a couple meets. I had sent athletes to Georgia, the country, and where else were they? Like all over the world, and I just didn't go because I was too scared to just get on a fucking plane. And I think that I still struggle with turbulence. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. I have like this illogical thought that the plane's gonna just fall apart, and I'm like, why the fuck is this giant metal bird up actually flying? But I think going back to is I've done a lot of time in like cognitive behavior therapy and doing that work on myself and learning why I have such a short fuse with anger and how I've mismanaged stress my whole life and how I've had these illogical thoughts. I jump to conclusions, and there's times I just want to fucking kill people. Like it made me realize like, dude, you've got to learn how to handle this stuff. And there's actually skills that go along with stress management. People aren't just like, some people are born to deal with stress really well, and some people are born to deal with stress well, but also rage at the same time. And that's sort of me. But I didn't know how to deal with stress and like slow my response down. And when I learned how to slow that response down, that's how I could handle the flights. And I'll be honest, I'm not like perfect when I get on a flight, but I'm much more. There's moments I've been on, especially when I've flown like the longer. I had a flight. I actually was talking about this earlier with a buddy of mine. I had a flight from Hong Kong to Newark, and it was like 16 and a half hours. And I remembered sitting on the plane because we were leaving from Thailand. We flew from Thailand to Hong Kong and then Hong Kong home. And I remember I actually sat on the plane and I was like, fucking thank God I'm on the plane. Nobody can text me or ask me to do any bullshit for them. Like, I can just chill here for 16 hours. Now, 8 hours into the flight, I was like, God, get me off this fucking plane. But it was still like a win for me of like learning how to handle that stress and just slowing my response down. Because I've always just had a very, very short fuse with anything. Like, and that was, to answer your question, that was the key component there, Frank, was just figuring out, engaging with trying to better myself mentally, really.
I'm glad you got the killing part. I'm glad you got the killing part under control anyway. Especially in a confined place like a plane.
Yes.
it's hats off to the therapist.
That's funny.
So, I mean, I guess to have you on, it'd be a shame not to bring up the fact that, if I got it right, like the shot put world record was like,
yeah, I was like 100 meters behind it.
Was that a surprise? Was that a surprise to you that the record was broken by the? Because I mean, most of the throwing records, not that I'm from a throwing background, but they kind of been there for a while. Like they are.
Yeah. They're all. I mean, I actually might even have on my recording of the. So what was crazy is that my guy Taman was in that final, and he was sandwiched between. So in the warm-ups, Joe Kovacs, who won the world title and beat Ryan Krauser in 2019, Krauser threw first. Taman was after Krauser, and then Joe Kovacs was after Taman. So Taman, my guy, had to throw between the two guys that everybody thought could break the world record. And Joe had, and I'm not joking, I bet you like a 2380 warm-up, everybody was losing their shit at how big it was. Now, in the comp, he threw like 2230. But everybody had sort of seen with Krauser, people thought he could break it last year. And everybody's sort of seen it coming, and then even in end of May, he had a 2301, I think it was.
Actually, I texted Dane. I saw him throw the one that was like 15 centimeters short of the record. And I texted Dane saying, I almost just saw the world record and the shot be broken. And then he one-upped me at the trials.
Yeah, so people saw it coming, and especially because the circle in Eugene here is pretty quick, but it's a nice circle. It's just it's fast though, and that sort of favors him. And he's super consistent. He's got really good technique, and every throw is the same. So it's sort of people felt it coming, but to go back to when he broke the world record, So I don't like videoing things, but I knew something was going to happen. So I'm videoing it here and I'm watching it because I want to watch it with my own eyes and then just save this later, right? It's like I want to be present, but at the same time, like cheat a little. And as soon as it popped up, I got to check if I have this on my phone because I had one of my discus guys was next to me. And I was going ape shit like, Randy Barnes can go fuck himself. He got popped twice, and still to this day, he just doesn't come out and admit he was on steroids. It's like, dude, just fucking own it up. Like, grow up. How do you still fucking deny this stuff? Like, you're an adult, and that's the stuff that I don't ever get. Like, you went your whole life as an athlete, and you're still that immature that you're gonna lie about you getting drug tested and popped twice. It's the same shit with this distance runner with Shelby Houlihan. It's like, you're a fucking liar. Grow up. Like, just admit it. Admit you fucked up. Like, dude, we all cheat on shit. I've cheated on fucking tests and stuff. I'll admit it. It doesn't necessarily make you this horrible person. But so I was so happy to see that fucking record go. And really with the throwing records, the javelin, I believe, was definitely tainted, and that might go down as well. That's close. There's a guy out of Germany who's close with that. And then Hammer, I know for a fact they were on drugs because Dr. B would tell us like who was taking what at what time. And then I think one of the hardest records in the books right now is the women's discus, and that's where it's like a lot of people are starting to complain that there's a lot of those records that are actually still even in existence. It's like the women's 800 meters and the women's discus records. They're like nobody's ever gonna touch them. They're literally like superhuman records, and it shows. I think it shows you like this. This record was set in '91. So what are we 30 fucking years behind? Like, so you're like that's the whole thing. That drugs literally puts you 30 plus years ahead of competition that's not using, and that's just to me that's insane if you think about it. So it's like that's where it was like cool to see with Krauser, and I think the other cool thing with Krauser is like his dad's his coach, and the way that they work together, like it's his dad sent him like he went to Texas and did his own thing, but it's like a really unique relationship that they have. It's not like it's not toxic in any way, shape, or form, and I think that that's something that's also really cool to see is like how they engage and interact with each other and how they go about their whole process it's really, really unique. So to see it even get to the point of where it's at now, where he's the new world record holder, it's I think it's fucking awesome. And I would say it's probably dude. I've seen fucking some crazy shit. I've seen Lasha Talakadze snatch 210 kilos, fucking 20 feet from me, and clean and jerk 260 kilos. I've seen Jordan Burroughs wrestle. I've seen fucking Kyle Snyder wrestle. I've seen some of the best athletes in the world compete and do crazy, crazy shit. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen in person. It was just, the feeling, and you could just feel every single fucking throw. He was getting closer and closer and closer, and boom.
Yeah, I mean, it's really neat too because I felt the same way because it's exactly what you touched on, where you knew that record was tainted, right? And you just wanted to eventually see someone be able to break it who is a clean athlete and is just a dedicated, hardworking athlete. So it's really cool when you see something like that happen and you're like, finally, someone has made a legitimate record and gone back and erased this.
Well, and that's the other thing is that now what's interesting in the world of sports right now is like, one, drug testing is extremely fucking effective. Like, as long as, WADA's not getting paid off, if it's, if you follow USADA and how USADA's protocols are, it's really, really fucking effective. It's really precise, and they test people all the fucking time. Like we have people drug tested at the gym so much by USADA that we actually have a parking space that has a sign that says like USADA parking only as like a joke. But I think what's crazy is that the drug testing is so effective. So, and at the same time, back in the 90s, there was the boom of, Nike was just blowing up, Adidas was blowing up. All these companies were just getting, going from like a $200 million company to a $1 billion company during that decade. And I think that now those companies aren't investing what they used to. So in the 90s and early 2000s, a lot of these guys were making like $1 million a year. And I'm sure Krauser makes good money, but he's not making enough money for him to be able to get a designer steroid from Victor Connie and pass a test. Like it's just the investment, the return isn't there. So because there's no financial return relative to 20 years ago. And I think that's an interesting part now with track, at least with throwing, is that the stuff we're seeing with women's hammer in the United States and with the men's shot, it's really, I think, all related to how much better our training has gotten. And I think, dude, this sounds crazy. I think a lot of the success is actually related to things like social media and like YouTube and just being able to share information and training theory and training methodology and recovery and having direct access to PubMed. It's just like, it's this big boom now where in sports science, in sports performance, because of how easy it is to see what the best coaches are doing, what the best athletes are doing. And now somebody like Krauser, this might get broken. I don't know. It might get broken in 10 years because the next kid is watching him train and seeing what he's doing in training. And he has direct access to really, really good resources that can help him get a leg up that Krauser didn't have. A lot of people are sitting there going, for Frank, his technique, he was a glider until he was like 18. Well, now everybody's spinning when they're fucking 10. So now that next, like, generation of throwing is inspired by this guy, and I think that's what we're going to see in the next like 10 years. It's going to get crazy.
Yeah. So I've just got one last question for you, and then maybe Eddie and Sam one more. But kind of piggybacking off of this, maybe this is naive, but is the doping the reason why you think USA weightlifting has been behind being on the podium so often in the past 20, 30 years? And that maybe now that they'll start to come back, or is it a lot more than that?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think if you look at like the 2019 world champs, just as the last world championships, and at a junior level, the women's team in the U.S. were like, I would say, number one or number two team overall weightlifting team. I would say probably number two behind China. I do still think China has, because they have such funding and they likely do have designer steroids. I don't care what anybody says. Like, if you just see what these guys do in the back, I think from a weightlifting perspective, I think because of the corruption, the IWF, the head of the IWF got caught laundering money to multiple different nations, paying off guys with WADA. Thomas Ayan. So if anybody wants to challenge me, they can just go Google him and see all the shit behind him. And he was ousted, and it was basically like all of these top countries were really, really good because they were hiding drug tests. They were paying people up to take a test for them. They were paying people to miss lifts. And so in the U.S., we were always behind the eight ball because our training wasn't as good. But now in the last like 10 years, you're starting to see, especially, the women's team is sort of dominating now. The men's team's really picking up steam. I do think too, though, because we have so many other sports, it's a harder sport to get into early on. But now with a lot more of like sports performance being around weightlifting and seeing the benefits of Olympic weightlifting, you're seeing some kids that just sort of sneak into the sport because they were a wrestler or they're a gymnast, or they had a dream that they wanted to go play D1 football, and they realized that being 5'5" is not really beneficial to be a Division I football player. So I think that's where we're starting to see in the U.S. that weightlifting is getting more successful. But I do believe up until a couple years ago, a lot of the issues were still related to doping.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the questions I'd wanted to ask you, and just to see how much you thought that was still an issue nowadays. I'm going to take us. Go ahead, please.
Well, I think with the doping stuff, it's like they tried to alleviate some of it by, they set up these trimesters in weightlifting, and so you had to compete at a drug tested meet for over 2.5 to 3 years in these trimesters. And they've changed the weight classes to sort of get rid of some of the old world records. And some of these guys, 2014, 2015, were putting up huge numbers at like a weight class like 77 kilos. And now they changed the weight class to 81, and they still aren't hitting the numbers that they were hitting at 77, like 10 kilos under those numbers. And it's like, that's sort of where it's like, all right, so now these countries, they're realizing like, and they have to come to the US for a world championships. And when they do that, their numbers are significantly lower because they're not on gas. It's like, so you can just see how the trends are changing because of that. The only one I'd say that isn't trending that way is the Chinese, and then Lasha, the super heavyweight, who has been popped, and I highly doubt is clean, but somehow he hasn't been popped again.
All right. I have my final question. Well, it's kind of two questions. I'd like I don't know if this is even possible, but I want to see if it's possible for us to set up to know what our scores are on your match as
that'd
a
be
sports
cool.
metric. So I'd like to be that we can say for off the podcast to work out how we can do that.
Yeah, we'll have to send you. I'll have to send you like the tests and shit you have to do.
Okay.
Is it possible to be minus?
No, dude, there's some really. I think but before you ask your other question, Ed, one of the other things that we do too at the gym is like in the U.S., like a dad brings in their kid, and I think that I've had parents tell me this, like, hey, one of the hardest things is like seeing your kid get beaten by other kids. And what's weird to me is like I guess I can sort of relate to it, but my oldest son is a pretty good athlete, but he's not the greatest. But I also just don't put like a shit ton of value on what he does as an athlete. Like I want him to do well, I want him to succeed, and I want him to go through all these trials successfully. But I know that it's not going to happen perfectly. It's not going to happen. But these parents will come in thinking like, yeah, my kid's going to be a Division I football player. My kid's going to be a state champion wrestler. And then we'll put them through these tests. And it's like, dude, your kid scored like a 37. That's like my son who's 9 could score like a 50. Like, get out of here. Like,
no.
He might not even start on the JV team and he's a junior. Like, he's not going D1, bro. Like, and it's telling them that it's like, you don't think, have you seen your kid move? Did you ever throw a baseball with him when he was younger? Like, did you spend time with him? Like, you should have thought about being a better dad fucking 10 years ago.
Have you said that exact monologue to someone?
He actually just said this morning. That's why I came out so fluid.
Yeah.
I always said, Frank, you'll probably like this one. Is I tell Caitlin all the time, I'm like, when I turn 40, it's over. All the bullshit that pisses me off, I'm fucking telling parents right away. And she was like, well, I mean, you are starting to get gray in your beard now, so that should help with like solidifying your wisdom to a point. I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, once like those interactions will happen at some point in my life. Well, like, because these parents are just they're literally disillusioned with what they think their kid is capable of. It's like, how are you so out of touch with fucking reality?
Well, I just want to throw it out there. Whoever amongst us gets the lowest score, you can give them that rant just directly. I'd like them to just a phone call from you with them telling them how. But my other
You're
question,
a bad person.
Yeah, my other question, which kind of ties into that, I guess, is to go back to a more like amateur athlete standpoint. Then, from a training perspective, what do you think that most amateur athletes do wrong? Like, if they're trying to build strength, is there like a single key mistake that you see happen across athletes? Or is it just very much dependent on a person?
I think it's really dependent upon a person, but I think some of the big things is just not comprehending the process and not comprehending. This will be like a 3-part answer. Not comprehending like how every fucking detail plays into how they recover from their training and like what's the purpose of training. And it's like they might lift really well, they might train in their sport, in their specific sport really well, but then they go to McDonald's for 3 meals and they get 4 hours of sleep because they're playing COD till fucking 5 in the morning.
Wait, hold on a second. If you've been watching my life, this feels very personal.
Oh, you two are doomed for scoring on this test.
But it's like, dude, like if you want to go to the Olympics or do this shit, all of this has to be in line. And then the other thing is like the time frame. So a lot of people will say like, I want to do this by this, and it's like, no, that's not how it works. It takes years and years and years and years and years to get to that point. And if you're 18 years old, unless you're a total phenom, to get to that world-class level, it's going to take you till you're 22, 23, 24, and then you've got to deal with what happens with life. And I think that that's where the third part is like the hardest transition for a weightlifter is going from a junior to a senior lifter, because that's when they're in college. They might get a job, and it's the same thing with throwing. With throwing, it's more so when they get out of college. There's that year or two where just kids don't know how to have a job. College, dude, you're 18 to 23. That's the dumbest age group of humanity. Like you're just the dumbest fucking person that you will ever be. That's the time frame when it's going to be. And it's like, then they think their life's hard because they're going to college and they've got all these papers to write. And then they graduate and they're like, shit, I've got to work a job and train and make my own meals. And my mom's not wiping my ass anymore. And now all of a sudden they realize like they get overwhelmed by that stuff. So I think that that's like, if you are like you're not in a professional sport like football or you know any of the major sports that has a big financial backing, is that there's a massive period of transition, and that transition period of a year to 2 years is going to set you back another year or 2 years on your performance goals. So you've got to have that long term, you know, bigger picture perspective set in place. Otherwise, everything's just going to be a fucking huge letdown. And you've got to be real with it. You've got to be like, once you get into your game, into your sport, it's like, what does it take to get to the top? And you've got to have a coach who believes that you can get to the top and that understands how to get to the top. And then they can look at you and be like, this is where your glaring issues are, and this is how we're going to fix it. And it's going to take a long fucking time. So I think that time frame, it's just like everything in life. It's like you want to be the best at anything. You've got to put in the fucking time and work.
Yeah, I mean it's such a great point, and we interviewed Frank Molinaro now a while ago. So anyone who's listening to this and should definitely go back and listen to that one. It's a really good episode. But you know, he was someone who you could tell early on when he was at Penn State wrestling. You know, he was still, like you said, a kid who was kind of just wrestling, thought he could run the world, and then realized, you know, he's got to do a lot more. And it wasn't until his, you know, final 2 years that he really started to trust the process, like you're saying, and be totally invested, right? You know, like taking care of your sleep, your nutrition, and everything. And, you know, he went on to win a national championship and then realized, you know, the grind to going to the Olympics isn't a 6-month grind. It's a 3-4 year grind. And he put in the time, and he, you know, would make schedules every day, every month, every year. You know, he'd time out, you know, short-term, long-term goals. So yeah, it's such a great point. And we've had other athletes have kind of said the same thing. It's definitely a long-term investment.
I actually think too, Frank, what you just said is, I think one of the biggest things to keeping shit in perspective is like how you mentioned with that schedule from Frankie, is you sit there and you go, all right, as a business owner, the best fucking business owners in the world, the guys that have grown a company to multiple $1 million, or have grown companies $100 million, those business owners, those CEOs, or whoever they are, the leaders of the companies, generally are very, very well structured. They've figured out some way to structure sort of like compartments or periods of their day so that they can execute everything as effectively as they can. And they understand how all of these moving pieces have to come together. And I think that that's something that I've learned running the businesses, but also then try to teach the athletes, is like, it can't be this shotgun effect. There's got to be precise, deliberate work that goes into doing that. And I think, dude, just having a fucking planner or a schedule on a daily basis can drastically improve the efforts that you put into your sport. If you are, you know, for anybody really. So get a scheduler, get a planner, Frank.
All right. Well, I know we've held you past the time you said you needed to go by anyway, so I don't want to.
Everybody's used to me being fucking late, so they'll just be like, "Oh, Dane's late again."
Let's give him one more real quick one.
Okay.
What is an Olympic athlete sport you'd like to train someone in that you haven't trained someone in yet?
Badminton.
Really?
Seriously?
Yeah, for sure. I'll say this though. Yeah, badminton. I would say Olympian though. Dude, this year, fucking freestyle wrestling. You know, I had Gwiz, who's a 2-time world bronze medalist, and we could just sense that Gable Stevenson, who's just he's on another level. And that I would probably actually say, if I could get a wrestler to the Olympics, I think that would be a huge accomplishment, personally, just because it's such a fucking hard sport. It's a very, very challenging sport. but I know it's funny, but I love badminton. And I started to work with it before COVID hit. I started to work with the Chinese sprint cycling team. And so the only reason I got this gig was there was a coach who's American and he's from Trexlertown, which is right near my house. And there's a velodrome, which is the sprint track that you're on when you do sprint cycling. And so every year there's this huge festival for like a month where all these countries come and they train there, and they have competitions every Friday. And I'd say at least 10 of them, like Canada, South Africa, New Zealand, Trinidad, the US, all these people would come and train at the gym. And so they would come in and they would also see the throwers and the wrestlers and the high school kids that we have and the weightlifters. And so this guy who was American he coached for Canada, and then he got a job at Trinidad and Tobago because they have a really good sprint cycling team. Long story short, he got a call from Team China I would be in 19, it was like October, and they flew him to Beijing, and he went, and they offered him this huge salary. So he took the job. And when he got there, the whole program was in shambles. So he trusted in me because he had been around me for about 3 years throughout these summer camps. And I started to work with the Chinese sprint cycling through 4 blocks. So we went through about like 12 to 16 weeks of training. And then that's when COVID hit. And I was about to fly to the UFC Performance Institute in Las Vegas because they were training there. And then COVID hit and everything just fucking got shut down. But that's another sport too that is a really, really interesting sport. And if you ever go and watch it, it's super intense and it's really enjoyable to watch. And there's a lot of different moving pieces that go into it. So I would say now that I've been in there a couple times, that would be another one, would be sprint cycling.
So can I just clarify on the badminton? Is that because you enjoy badminton and it would be cool to coach it, or because you think that the explosiveness that you could help them to generate would be crucial to their success within the sport?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both. I think it's just, growing up, I have these long games that we play, with my high school friends that we played. Like growing up, I would play badminton so much in my parents' backyard that our badminton court would be completely turned into dirt. And we would we play for 5 hours sober. Then we played games while we would be drinking. And it's such a fast sport. I know it sounds funny, but it's like when you watch how quick everything is, it's really freaking crazy. And I it's got a little place in my heart too.
I mean, I like badminton, so I was just surprised. I thought it was like a left field answer, but it makes sense. But yeah.
It's funny.
Now I'm going to be thinking about that question the rest of the day. What other sports do I want to coach somebody? Sam, God damn it, I keep calling Frank Sam. Frank, I don't know if you saw, I had a decathlete who got 10th at the trials, and he just graduated from college. I've been working with him. He's a D2 guy for like 3.5 years now. And that is another area in track that I would love to get into, because it's like the throws score a lot of points, but also understanding how the vault works and the long jump and all the different parts of that. And then I don't know if you've ever done this, but I got to coach him during the 15. So I'm screaming splits at him. Like every time he'd come around, I'm telling him his splits and when he's hitting me. And it was like the most exhilarating thing. I felt like I was a part of his competition. So I'm screaming like 74. And some of the throws coaches were trolling me afterwards. They were texting me like, were you just telling your decathlete to just keep turning left as he was running? That was like experiencing that actual event of a sport that I'm not. It's I'm in track, but I'm not in with decathletes typically. It made me like, wow, that was freaking fun when we were done. And then I'm sitting there like, man, how do I get more decathletes here? So that's another one that I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, we had previously on the podcast, we had Thomas Gronemark, who was a former Danish bobsledder, and he's now
that'd be cool.
He's now the world's premier throwing coach. So it's like a weird transition. Really? So he's now in soccer and football, as he works with Liverpool and Ajax and a number of like elite teams, specifically just on throw-ins. But his background was, I mean, So it's kind of those weird transitions of where he's trying to apply things that he learned from one sport and take it to another one to help with the approach.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with bobsled is similar to throwing. They're just training to be as fast and as explosive as possible. So I could see that transfer for sure.
Yeah, it's like Lolo Jones, right? Being going to the bobsledding team
hurdles.
for the hurdles because she's so explosive. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Dane. It's been
thanks
quite
for
a pleasure.
It's been great. Thank you.
It's been good. Thank you.